Starting jewellery making, loops, jump rings, feeling perplexed? You're not alone. The basics can be surprisingly tricky, but mastering just 10 essential techniques is the fastest, most straightforward path to confidently creating beautiful jewellery. Because in this episode, I'm giving you the blueprint, the 10 fundamental techniques every beginner must know. Learn to straighten wire easily, make perfect loops every time, handle jump rings the right way, and finish necklaces securely with crimps. These aren't just steps, they're your foundation for creating stunning pieces confidently. Hello, welcome to The Stylish Maker. My name's Carol. Today we are going back to basics. I'm going to show you 10 essential jewellery making techniques to get you started on your jewellery making journey. I'm not going to be making any projects today, but I will leave an episode where I make 5 beginner projects down in the description box and at the end of the episode so that you can go there next. Today, it's all about how to do the basics. There are some really basic things that, as a jewellery maker, we just take for granted. They are super easy techniques, but when you begin, you don't know what you don't know. As we go through, I'll also refer to some other episodes where I have done a deep dive on some of these techniques, and I'll link them below as well. Let's start by looking at how to straighten a head pin. When you purchase head pins, they often come quite bent. You need one of two things to straighten a head pin, either nylon jawed pliers like these or a wire straightening tool like this one. You can also use a cloth if you've got strong hands and just pull it down the length of the head pin. I'm generally not strong enough to really get a straight wire when I do this, so I like to use my nylon jawed pliers. So I've got a couple of head pins here, and as you can see, they are bent. This is what a straight one should look like, and these ones are bent. So I'm going to show you how to use my nylon jawed pliers to straighten them. So all you do is you take your nylon jawed pliers and you pop the head pin in it, and then you just pull down the length of the wire. Now, it can be quite a challenge and you don't always get it right the first time. So you just continue to do that until you get a nice straight head pin. Now you can see I've got a little kink on the end there. Take this tool, which I love this tool. This was a game changer for me. I'm going to hold the other end in my nylon jawed pliers. So the end with the head I'm actually holding in my nylon jawed pliers. And I'm going to pull this the length. It might take me a couple of tries to do this, but it's a great little tool. So there's my head pin after I've straightened it, and it looks pretty straight, good enough to use. If you've got a piece of wire that's got a hard kink in it, this is the tool for you. So you just do the same thing. I'm going to use my nylon jawed pliers to hold it and just pull it through. And you can see it made it worse, but sometimes that happens before it makes it better. And you just keep straightening it until it's nice and straight. As I said, sometimes you might need to do it 3 or 4 times to get it right. Yes, you can see there's a little bit of a kink in it, and I could play with it more to get it right. I'm not going to worry about that today. So now you have nice straight head pins. How to make a basic loop. One of the most basic things you need to know in jewellery making is how to make a simple loop. Now, loops seem really easy. You just make a loop in a piece of wire, but they are surprisingly perplexing. I'm not going to say that they are hard, but they do take some time to master. And I've done a whole episode on perfecting the loop, so I'll leave that linked in the description box below for you. But here it is in a nutshell. Tools and supplies are crucial to getting the perfect loop. You will need a pair of round nose pliers or bail shaping pliers. So these are round nose pliers, and as you can see, they have a round jaw and they are thinner at one end than the other. These ones are bail shaping pliers, and these ones have lots of steps so you can make different sized loops with them. Now you can make different sized loops with your round nose pliers as well. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. These ones are good if you want the same size loop every time, which we do, but there are tricks which I've talked about in that other video on how to get a loop the same size every time using your round nose pliers. You will also need some wire. Personally, I find that a German style half hard wire is the absolute best for making loops. It's not too soft, so will hold its shape, and it's not too hard that I can't turn it into a nice shape. So this is a piece of my silver wire. It's silver plated with a copper core, and this is what the pack looks like. You are looking for a German style wire in a half hard temper. So that's important. And this one is a 20 gauge. Now I like to use either a 20 or a 22 gauge for making loops. I wouldn't go any thinner than that simply because it will not hold. So let's have a look at how you make a loop. First, I'm going to show you how to get a straight cut, because a straight cut is actually fundamental for getting a really good loop. If you have a look at the end of this wire, you'll see that the cut that I made there is not quite straight. It's a little bit pointy. Now, when I take my cutters, I have a flat side and a divoted side. To get a straight cut, I need to use my flat side. So what I'm going to do is just cut the bare minimum off this wire with the flat side of my cutters, and I'm going to make sure I cover it so that it doesn't fly away, and pop it in your rubbish bin so you don't get it in your foot. And now I've got a nice flat cut, and the reason you need a flat cut is so that when your loop comes around, it tucks in nicely, that tail tucks in nicely. So I'm going to use my chain nose pliers, and I'm going to make a bend in my wire about 1 centimetre from the end, just like that, a nice right angled bend. I'm going to tuck my finger or my thumb into that bend, holding it like that. Now I'm going to take my round nose pliers, and I want to make sure that the end of my wire is not sticking up. So I want to feel it and make sure that it's not sticking up. And then I'm going to push kind of down and away from me. So turning my hand away from me, but pushing down so there's pressure on my thumbnail as well. I'm going to take my pliers out. I'm going to turn my hand back simply because my hand doesn't go any further. Pop that loop back onto the jaw of the pliers and continue to turn until the end of your wire meets up with the wire coming up. And you can see that here my tail is tucking nicely into this wire simply because I had that nice straight cut. Now sometimes you'll want to put some beads on, obviously, and make a loop. So I wanted to show you that as well. So I've got some beads on this little head pin here, and I'm going to just make a bend in my wire, and you'll notice that I just popped my thumb on top of it and bent the wire over. Then I'm going to take my cutters, and using the flash side, I'm going to cut the wire at about 1 centimetre from the bend. Taking my round nose pliers, pop it in between the jaws, making sure that it's not sticking up. Then pop your thumb into the bend there, and pushing down and around, just turn your wrist, take your pliers out and turn some more. There we go. Now I have a little dangle for you. We're just going to pop that aside. We're going to use it later. How to open and close jump rings. Jump rings are a mainstay of jewelry making. While you can make your own, it's much easier just to purchase pre-made ones in different sizes. As a beginner, you will probably want to purchase 4mm and 6mm jump rings. Now you've got your jump rings, you need to know how they work. The biggest thing to remember with jump rings is not to pull them apart or you'll disrupt the shape. Here I've got some 8mm jump rings just because they're bigger and it makes it easier for you to see. Now you are going to need chain nose pliers. 2 pairs of chain nose pliers is absolutely essential for jewelry making. With my jump ring, if I open it like this, okay, so by pulling it apart, you can see what that's done to the shape of my jump ring. Now how am I going to get it closed? So if I try and push this back together somehow, it's even really hard to do. You can see what I did to the shape of my jump ring, and it will never go back. So that is how not to do it. This is how to do it right. So take your jump ring and hold it on either side with your pliers. Now you'll notice I've got the split in the jump ring at the top here, and then hold it on the other side with another pair of pliers. And what you're going to do is move your right hand down so that the jump ring opens. Now I can pop on a dangle, and I can close the jump ring just by reversing that process. So I've got my one hand is straight and my right hand is down. Now obviously if you're left-handed you could do this the other way, and I'm going to just reverse that process, so pulling it back. So now you can see that my jump ring isn't quite closed, so I'm going to show you how to fix that. And you're actually going to go up and down with your right hand, pushing your right hand towards your left. So you just give it a bit of a wiggle, up and down, pushing, 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 until it closes properly. And there we go. Now my jump ring is nicely closed. How to add an ear wire. Without an ear wire, a dangle is just a dangle. Earrings are one of the simplest things to make, and you can literally make a pair in 5 minutes. I've done a couple of episodes with 5-minute earrings, and I'll leave those links below. To make the dangle, all I did was put some beads onto a head pin and make a loop at the top. Now I need to attach my ear wire or ear hook to the top, making it into an earring. So I've got a couple of dangles here, and I've got my ear wires. These ones are a flat back ear hook, meaning that this part of the wire has been hammered flat. Now from experience, I know that these ear hooks open here. So I'm going to open the loop and I'm going to pop on my dangle. So I'm going to hold it like this, between my forefinger and my thumb, and I want to support it really well because I don't want to bend it. And then I'm going to take my chain nose pliers, holding the loop on the side that opens. On the side, not like this. I don't want to do that because that will bend it out of shape. I want to do this. Then I'm just going to turn my hand down like I did with the loop, holding my ear wire firmly in this hand. So there it is with its loop open. Now these little balls will want to fall down inside that loop. Just pop them back up. And then we're going to just take our dangle and pop it on. And then I'm going to take my chain nose pliers again and supporting the ear wire again and just closing it the same way I did with the loop. So bringing my hand back up. Let's do that again. So we have a pair of earrings. So holding it on the side, supporting my ear wire, turning my hand down, popping on the dangle, holding the ear wire on the side again and moving my hand up. And if it doesn't close the first time, you just use that same technique I just showed you with the loops to move it in. And now I have a little pair of dangly earrings. Super quick and easy. You saw how quick it was. How to make a wire-wrapped loop. Wire-wrapped loops can add dimension to your piece, but they are also used to give strength if you're using a thinner gauge wire, for example, a 26 gauge. I'm going to demonstrate with a 22 gauge wire. So this is a component that I've made with 2 wire-wrapped loops. And you can see here the little wrapping of the wire around the stalk of the wire coming through the beads. So I'm going to make another one of these. And then I'm going to show you how to join them together. To make a wire wrap loop, you need to give yourself enough space for the wrapping part. And this is where I always used to go wrong. I always used to cut it too short and I'd end up struggling to get it round. So I like to leave myself about 1.5 inches, or what's that, about 4 centimeters, just to play with. And I'm going to hold the wire in my pliers like this and make a right angle bend. Now I'm going to take my round nose pliers and I'm going to tuck them into the bend there. And I'm going to push my wire around and down like that. Then I'm going to turn my wrist and I'm going to pull my wire all the way across. And now I have that. Then I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and I'm going to hold the loop in the pliers. I'm going to take the tail. Now you can do this with pliers if you prefer, but this wire is soft, so it's soft enough that I can actually use my hand to wrap it. Just going to pull that wire around, keeping it nice and firm and trying to stack my wraps together. There we go, I have wrapped that around twice. Now I want to cut off my tail. So I'm coming in with the flush side of my cutters and I am going to get as close in there as I can. Make sure you hold the end of your wire. Now you've got a little tail here, so you need to tuck that in. Now personally, I prefer to use my crimping pliers for this because they've got nice pointy ends and you can get right in there. So I'm going to hold my loop in my other hand and just give it a squeeze. All right, so there's my finished loop. And now I'm going to put on some beads. So I'm going to pop on a little, what is that, a 3x4mm faceted rondelle, and a glass faceted rondelle. I've got a bead cap, a 6mm bead cap. These are 8mm acrylic beads, and I'm going to do another bead cap and another of my faceted rondelles. So there's what I have. And now I'm going to make another wire wrap loop, but I'm going to add it to this one so that we've got starting a chain. I find the best way to do this is to actually use my pliers to judge the distance that I need for my wraps. So I like to put my pliers on top of my bead, and the further up you go with your pliers, so if I go way up here, then my bend is going to be way further away from my bead. So I actually like to come all the way down here, not far from the end. So that gives me just a little bit of wrapping space. And then I'm going to bend my wire over. So that's what I have now. Now I'm going to take my round nose pliers and pop them into that bend. I'm going to push up and around and down, and then turn my hand and bring my wire across. Then I'm going to take my pliers out and I'm going to make my wraps. But before I do that, I'm going to feed on this one here. So I want to pull it up, and when it gets here, you will have difficulty. So you can generally just pop it through. If you can't, you can lift it up and put it through. Now before I do my loop, I'm going to give it a bit of a squeeze down so that that is now sitting nice and flat. And now I'm going to wrap around twice. and you can see I've pretty much filled the space there. Now I'm going to cut off my end and tuck in my tail. And there is the beginning of a pretty cool bracelet. Now I have done an episode all about using wire wrap loops, so I will leave that one linked below as well. How to measure and cut chain. I frequently add chain to my projects, either as a swag or as part of the design, so you'll need to know how to cut it. Here are my best tips. If you need to cut 2 pieces of chain the same length, my best tip is to hang it. So I've got some chain here, and what I want to do is cut another piece of chain the same length as this one. So what I'm going to do, I've got a piece of wire here, it's just a scrap and I've bent it, and I'm going to pick up this piece of chain on my wire. And then I'm going to take the end of this piece of chain and pop it on my wire as well. Now the easiest way to do this is to hang it. By looking at my wire hanging up here, I can see that it's this link that I need to cut. So I just take my cutters and I cut that link. So you can see here my 2 pieces of chain are now the same length, and you could make 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 pieces of chain the same length. Now with this necklace I made swags, so these ones I cut at exactly the same length and I attached them at intervals along my necklace. So that is a way you can use chain that's quite interesting. Now you notice I use my flush cutters for cutting my chain. Now this is a piece of stainless steel chain, and it's really hard. So what I do is I use my memory wire cutters to cut my chain, and it just means that I won't dull my good cutters. So that was nice and easy. Whereas if I try that with my other cutters, it's quite hard. There is one other way you can make sure that your chain is the same length. I can count the links, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've got 10 links there and I've got 10 links here. So you can cut chain that way as well. It's just a little bit easier to hang. How to attach a chain. Now that you've cut your chain, you need to know how to attach it. And I'm going to show you how to attach it using a jump ring. So I've got a piece of chain in front of me and I've got a clasp and some jump rings. You know where this is going. I'm going to use my jump ring to attach my clasp to my chain. All right, so I'm going to take my jump ring and find where the split is and put it at the top here. And then I'm going to hold the other side in my pliers just like I did before, and I'm going to turn my hand down. Now I'm going to feed on my clasp and the end of my chain, and then I'm going to close my jump ring. And now my clasp is attached to my chain. Nice and easy. If you're enjoying this episode and would like to see more, remember to hit that subscribe button. If you would like to be notified every time I publish a new episode, then consider joining my mailing list and I'll email you every time a new episode comes out. How to string a necklace. One of the easiest things to make is a necklace. They can be really fancy or they can be really simple, like the one I'm wearing today. There are several different materials you can use for stringing a necklace. Personally, my favorite is tiger tail. I generally use a 3.8mm tiger tail. Tiger tail is made up of 19 strands of wire twisted together and coated with nylon. I couldn't break it if I tried, although I'm sure you could if you really put your mind to it. I like to lay out my necklace design using a beadboard before I start. That way I know where everything is going. But if it's a simple necklace that doesn't really have a design, then I'm happy to just pop the beads on. Here's my beadboard with my necklace laid out, and I've almost strung my necklace, but I wanted to show you what I was doing. I like to put a bead stopper on one end, and the reason I do this is simply to stop the beads falling off. A bead stopper is a spring that when you squeeze the little handles, it opens so you can pop your wire in there and it stops everything falling off. So as you can see, I've laid out this necklace on my beadboard and I have strung it almost. I've got 4 or 5 beads to go. You don't need a needle or anything. All I'm going to do is pop these beads on to my wire here. Now this design is a fairly random design. I just laid out the beads and thought, yep, that looks okay. There is no pattern to this design at all, except that I did want 2 things. I wanted this large bead to be in the center and I wanted another repeat of the bead on either side. However, I did not want them to be equal because it's not a symmetrical necklace. So I just kind of randomly popped them on and then put beads between them. The other thing about this necklace is that there is a beaded rondelle or daisy spacer bead between every single bead. The texture of some of these beads, I've got some faceted ones and some smooth ones, makes it interesting, and the darker beads popped every so often also gives interest. Now, I have done a whole episode on stringing, so I'll leave that one linked below as well. How to attach a clasp. Now, I know I already showed you how to attach a clasp to a piece of chain, but it's a little bit different when you've strung a necklace. So this necklace that I've strung will need a clasp, so let's do it. Along with your clasp, you will need something to hold everything in place, so your clasp and the beads don't fall off. This is where crimps come in. If you want a detailed episode about crimps, I'll leave one about 3 different ways to do it linked below. So these are crimp tubes. They are very tiny. These ones are 2 millimeters long, and basically what a crimp tube is a bead that you squash. So you want to squash it to hold everything tight. So once your tiger tail's in there and you squash it, nothing moves. So we're going to start off with one end of our necklace, and we're going to feed on our crimp tube. And then I want to attach my clasp, but I personally always attach my clasp with a jump ring, simply because if anything goes wrong with the clasp, which sometimes happens, you can replace it easily and you don't have to restring the entire necklace. I'm going to take my 2 pairs of chain nose pliers and my jump ring, and this one's already open, but probably not enough, so I'm just going to open it a little bit more. Pop on my clasp, and I'm going to close it. Now, the reason I always attach my clasp with a jump ring is because I had a clasp fail on me. I was running out the door to a party, my clasp failed, and I hadn't used a jump ring, so I had to restring the entire necklace because I didn't have another one that would work with my outfit. So I learned from that. So learn from my mistake and always attach a clasp with the jump ring. So there's my clasp with the jump ring attached. So I've got my crimp tube on here. Now I'm going to feed on my clasp, or the jump ring attached to my clasp, and then I'm going to come back down through the crimp tube, and I like to go through a couple of beads as well. Some people don't like to do this. For me, I just think it makes it a little more secure. So you need to make sure that you trap your jump ring in the loop of your tiger tail before you put it back through down through here. Now I'm going to use my magical crimping pliers to crimp my crimp tube. There are other ways and other tools to use, and I will leave you an episode all about 3 different ways to crimp linked below. So with my magical crimping tool, it makes it into, it looks like a bead. So I'm going to take my pliers, I'm going to put my crimp tube into the little divot there, and I'm going to give it a squeeze. And then I'm going to give it a quarter turn and a squeeze again. And I'm going to keep doing that until it looks like it's supposed to, a nice round little bead. Now, I often have people tell me that the magical crimping pliers, they can't make them work. So I have done an episode all about how to troubleshoot them as well. So I'll leave that one linked below as well. There's my crimp tube. And now, as you can see, it looks like a little bead. Now, I really like to hide my tail inside a big bead. So I'm going to put my beaded rondelle there, and I'm going to cut my tail at about halfway through this big bead. So putting my tail up, make sure you cut the tail, not the actual necklace. And I'm going to cut it probably about here. So I've got a bit of a tail there. And now when I feed everything up, it'll be hidden inside there like that. Now I'm going to put on my other jump ring, but I'm going to put on a little dangly extender as well. So this is just a little extender chain I've made, and I've attached a little dangle to the end with a 4mm jump ring. Now I'm going to take my jump ring and I'm going to put that extender chain onto my jump ring and close it. Now this jump ring will be what the clasp does up into. Now I'm going to take off my bead stopper, and I'm going to feed on my other crimp tube. Then my jump ring I've just attached, and now I'm coming back down through my crimp tube. So my crimp tube is on the wrong side, so I need to make sure that my crimp tube is on the left-hand side or the right side, the correct side of my jump ring, so that I'm catching my jump ring inside my loop of my tiger tail. I'm just feeding that on down through some of the beads as well. So I want to pull everything up. Now if I pull that, nothing's happening. So what I need to do is move my crimp tube down and then pull. And that should pull everything up. And you might need to do that several times. So my necklace is still moving nicely. There's no gaps. Just double check there's no gaps. Yep, I have got a bit of a gap. So I'm going to pull it down again and pull my tiger tail again. Let's try that again. Nope, that's good. Okay, so now I'm going to take my magical crimping pliers and do exactly the same thing. So give it a squeeze, give it a turn. And then I'm just going to trim off my end and it will hide away inside the beads there. And there's my necklace finished. I'd like to take a moment to thank the Style Makers Network for sponsoring this episode. By joining the Style Makers Network, you will get a whole lot more of me. You will get to join Zoom calls and live streams and early access to my episodes ad-free. You'll also get to join in monthly challenges. There are lots of different membership options, so I'd like to invite you to check those out. I really appreciate your support. I'll leave you that linked below. How to use crimp covers. Now your necklace is almost done, but there's just one more finishing touch and it's optional, but worth the effort. I like to cover my crimps. Of course, when I'm using the magical crimping tool, I don't need to use a crimp cover, but crimp covers are my kryptonite. I absolutely hate them, but I'm going to weather the storm that is crimp covers to show you. It's not that it's a hard technique, I just find it really fiddly and I don't love doing it. So what I have here is a piece of tiger tail that I've crimped, and I haven't used my magical crimper, I have used the traditional fold over method. And I'm going to use a crimp cover to cover it. So this is a crimp cover and it's like a little Pac-Man. Basically it's a round bead that has a chunk cut out of it and you're going to squeeze it closed. Now I do like to use my crimping pliers to do this. So I take my crimp cover in my pliers like this, and you can see there's the opening, and I pop my crimp inside the crimp cover and I squeeze it closed. And there we go. Now it looks like a bead now that I have closed it, and that's probably the best one I've ever done. Just for you. So there we go, that's using a crimp cover. There are a lot of other techniques that can help you out. For example, how to tie a knot on a stretch bracelet or how to use texture and shape to create a stunning piece. As I said, I'll link to the other episode with 5 basic projects to get you started. If you need to know what tools to purchase, I'll link to an episode where I explain the basic tools as well. I'll link all of these projects that I've talked about today in the description box below, so you can check those out for yourself. Thank you so much for watching today. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you again soon.